My name is Dr. Garrett Hallwig. I've spent my career as a psychiatrist helping others discover the truth about our reality. In 2013, I nearly died from an infection and briefly peered into the spiritual dimension. I'm thankful to be alive and share what I know. This provocative Time cover asked, "Is truth dead?" Different perspectives of reality are not all true. If you've been following this series, by now you know we should treat all people equal, but not all ideas. We can tolerate people who have different ideas, but we need to discuss ideas and discover the truth. How do we discover truth? Through experience and reason. Why should we seek truth? Because truth impacts our thinking, emotions, and behaviors. Truth has real life consequences. The closer your truth is to the truth, the better your thinking, emotions, and behaviors. In this series, I have ventured to love you enough to share the experience and wisdom of others and use reason and logic to discover the truth. Our experience tells us the world is broken. Look around you, you'll find illness, hurtful relationships, divorce, suffering, injustice, natural disasters, poverty, and war and death. I meet many people who are unsure about the future and where they are going. Most are afraid to face questions like what happens when we die. For many, it is uncomfortable to talk about divisive things like religion. So we don't talk about things like heaven and hell. Some don't want to admit they feel lost. Others don't want to admit they don't have a clue how you get to heaven or hell if they exist. Tonight, we talk about our destiny. Where are we going? What happens to us after we die? In our last discussion, we talked about morality, or how should we live. In Dante's Inferno, he sees human beings act. Dante sees humans need something to tell them how to act and to inspire them to act rightly, and something to check them when they act wrongly, both guide and rein. How to act is a choice, as we have seen. Tonight, let's see how this choice relates to life after death. Do we act a certain way and hope it will impact where we go? Do we need heaven and hell to guide and rein our behavior? Or do we act a certain way because we know the truth? Let me give 3 examples. Example number 1. I act a certain way in hopes that I will go to heaven. Example number 2. I act a certain way because I am certain there is no God, no heaven, no hell. Example number 3. I know there is a God, and I act a certain way because I know Him. Example number 1 is the most common. It's the way most of the world believes. I act a certain way in hopes that I will go to heaven. In fact, it was even the subject of a recent TV series called The Good Place. Points are calculated for everything you do in life, and if the points are good enough, you get into the good place. This paradigm, if I'm good enough, then I will go to heaven, is the basis for all religion. For those who believe in heaven or nirvana, they believe God or the universe is watching the good you do and the bad you do, and if the good outweighs the bad, you're in heaven or you ascend to a higher level. If not, you go to hell or descend to a lower level. Let's look at the second example. I act a certain way because I am certain there is no God, no heaven, no hell. Some prefer this paradigm because of the obvious benefit of no moral constraints except yourself and the government's laws. I can do whatever I want, whatever is right in my own eyes. Others who hold this view may even be considered very good people, very moral people, but if they are convinced there is no God, no heaven, no hell, they act good to win the approval of others or themselves. Because in the end, if we all die and our consciousness ceases to exist, then what we do in life ultimately is meaningless. The sun will burn out, the earth will grow cold, and it won't matter you walked the old lady across the street, or fed the hungry, or comforted a dying child. If there is a place called heaven, then what does it take to get in? In order to be completely convinced there is a place called heaven, it would take knowing the creator of heaven. So let's explore the third paradigm. I know God and I act a certain way because I know him. Notice this idea is different because it focuses on knowing God. One aspect of knowing God is knowing he created heaven, earth, and hell. It doesn't focus on getting something from him, but by knowing and trusting in him, you get heaven thrown in. Let's look at this from God's perspective. Imagine you're the owner of a great mansion. Your deepest desire is to have a relationship with someone. The only problem is some people just like you because they just want to party at your mansion. And some people just like you because of your popularity. Others just like you because you're really powerful. But if they don't like you, just your things or your power or your fame, then there is no real relationship. This is not so hard to imagine. I've been in a room full of people and in walks a celebrity. All of the focus and attention changes. People start acting different from how they previously were acting. Or imagine yourself at work. All of your coworkers are talking in the lunchroom. In walks your boss. You can imagine how their thoughts, emotions, and behaviors change when the boss walks in. Because God exists, a place called heaven exists, because being in God's presence is heaven. The magnitude of a place like heaven, being in God's actual presence, his authority, his celebrity, all of this can be overwhelming for some or feel intimidating to some to pursue a relationship with God. The truth is, God pursues you. You might be watching this video thinking, I want to have a relationship with God. That might be just God pursuing you right now. How do you pursue a relationship? Well, check out his love letter. Once I heard a funny story that goes like this. The atheist said to a Christian, if God exists, why does he try so hard to hide from man? And to that the Christian said to the atheist, have you ever studied the Bible? The atheist said to the Christian, nah, that is just a work of man. To that the Christian responded, have you ever considered the Bible is a work that compelled 35 people over thousands of years, so inspired by events, to write them into a book that contains a comprehensive singular story that was preserved by a dozen people to their death and withstands historical, literary criticism better than any ancient work of literature, whose first line, in the beginning, was proven by cosmologists through the second law of thermodynamics, radiation afterglow, great galaxy seeds, Hubble's observation of the expanding universe, Einstein's theory of relativity, and Hawking's singularity theorem. To physicists, God showed the universe is so tightly tuned it could not be an accident. To evolutionary biologists, God showed that life is so complex to occur by random chance mutations would be statistically impossible. To computer programmers, God showed a coding language within DNA more complex than any known operating system. To neuroscientists, God showed a consciousness unique to human brains, not reducible to physical matter, that allows an understanding of God. The Bible has been taken to every country on the planet, translated into 636 languages, and partially translated into 3,223 languages. It is the most produced, most bought, and most read book in the history of the world. To that, the atheist said, I still think if God exists, he would show himself to me, or give me a sign? Why would he hide from me? After a pause, the Christian said to the atheist, have you ever had the thought, why are you trying so hard to hide from God? The first question in checking out God and finding out if his love letter is true is to begin a relationship with him. So let's look at some of these truths about the Bible. The authors held their testimony to their own death. They could have given it up at any time and been set free, but they held on to the truth because they knew it was the truth and they'd rather face death than give up the truth. They were early eyewitnesses that gave embarrassing enemy-attested archaeological corroborated evidence. There were multiple sources with a coherence of dissimilarity, independent and trustworthy, confirmed by non-Christian writers and sources. The writers challenged their readers to check verifiable facts, even miracles, by mentioning specific names in their writings while they were still living, like Malchus, whose ear was cut off and restored by Jesus. So you could go verify with Malchus, hey, Malchus, did this really happen? These authors also abandoned long-held sacred beliefs and practices to the extent they were isolated from their family, friends, and community, and imprisoned, tortured, and killed. Historic events that were accurately predicted in advance in the Bible can also be verified. Take one supernatural prediction of the future in Daniel 9. 500 years before it happened, the date of the arrival and death of Jesus was accurately predicted. Some ask me, how do I know God wants to have a relationship with me? Or they say, I cannot accept a God that is all good and would send someone to hell. But God would not force someone to be in his presence, which is to say, he wouldn't send anyone against their will to heaven. He would not force them to dwell in his presence. This would be slavery. Let me explain. Heaven is just the dwelling place in the presence of God. To dwell apart from God is hell. So going to heaven, according to Christianity, means having a relationship with God by putting your trust in his rescue plan, Jesus. But God cannot make you love him. Have you ever had the experience of someone who found you attractive? They might have even told you they loved you. But as hard as they worked at it, they could not make you love them back. Or maybe you've tried to make someone love you. It just doesn't work. Love, by its very nature, is voluntary. How do you have a relationship with God? Read his love letter to humanity, the Bible. The entire narrative is God's desire to restore a relationship with humanity. Test out truth claims of Jesus to be God. He was sinless, performed miracles, predicted and accomplished his own death and resurrection, and taught the Old Testament was true. Make a choice to put your trust in God and his rescue plan, Jesus. The acceptance and the love of Jesus that Jesus gives is not dependent on your merit. There is nothing you can do to earn it. When you contemplate the cost and motivation of Jesus' actions to find you and save you, it moves you to want to do good works and share this truth with others. An atheist once told me, if you are a true Christian and don't tell me about Christianity, there are only two possibilities. Number one, you don't really believe it's true. Or number two, you don't love me enough to tell me about it. Not even God can force us to choose a relationship with Him. Each must choose whom or what we serve. But all must decide what to do with the historical figure of Jesus. There are only three options. We dismiss him as a lunatic, we reject him as a liar, or we love him as Lord. The relationship is a free gift and our choice to admit our wrong and receive his rescue plan. We end this series answering the most important questions of life by discussing our future. We learned God has a plan and a desire for us to dwell in his presence. But the choice is yours. God's plan is for us to be in heaven by realizing how much he loves us, all of us. But you have to choose him by trusting in the one that came to the earth on a rescue mission to find you and show you what God is like. His name was Jesus. Thank you for listening. I'm Dr. Garrett Hallweg.